YouTube and welcome back to my channel. If you've never seen my face before, my name is Dremi Echandi, as you can see right here, and I basically just talk about anything that's on my mind week after week. And this week is finally the finale of Doctor Who. Well, it's already passed, but it's my reaction to the finale of the Doctor Who season 2. And I thought, since it is the finale and it's 2 very special episodes, I would bring in my
guy. It's me.
He's back.
Back for the finale. Special guest. Boom. Editing.
I'm gonna have to do all of that. I thought I would bring him back because he also watches Doctor Who.
I do.
I made him watch Doctor Who as a requirement for us to date. So
Right.
you have to be a Whovian
Yeah.
in order for us to date. But anyway, I thought we would give like our first thoughts first, and then we would go into like the spoily section like I always do. He doesn't watch my videos, so he doesn't know.
Not true.
But yeah. Do you have any like initial thoughts
Initial thoughts
that aren't spoily?
Overall, the pacing was pretty good. Overall, it feels like a professional distance from the viewer.
Okay, cool.
You. I haven't forgotten about you,
For
Bob.
viewers like you. Thank you.
Pacing wise, I think they do a really good job. Overall, like I didn't feel like I was bored at any point. Really hit the high notes really well. Cinematography wise, I mean, they do a really good job since the Disney/New to make everything look really pretty, which sometimes is good, sometimes is bad. But there are some really good like practical effects and set pieces and like areas in this episode, these episodes that they do a really good job with. That's a spoiler.
You filing that away?
The music is good. The acting is pretty good. There are some things I did not enjoy about what direction they took some of these characters, but I guess we'll get into the spoiler section. It's not cross. And overall, I think they did a pretty good job, my opinion aside.
Cool. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Politically correct answer.
My initial thoughts, I thought the outfits were really cool. I always talk about the outfits. It's very retro. It was giving like Lux, at least in the beginning, it was giving like Lux. And I think the acting was pretty good. Except for Belinda, but we'll talk about that later. I feel like they ruined her, but it's fine. And I feel like if we watched Classic Who, maybe this episode would have been like a lot cooler. Because if you watch the last episode, they show a character called Ronnie, and that's like a Classic Who character. And I feel like we had no idea who she was, so it was like, okay, a new character, I guess.
Yeah, I think this new Who is going in a direction I don't particularly enjoy. And I feel like they're really like needlessly using nostalgia when they don't have to. They have a really solid cast. The actor that done Shruti is a really good doctor, and Belinda was a really interesting companion. They had a really good dynamic, and it's like they didn't need to rely on these nostalgia bits like the Ronnie. And
the toy maker.
Right, and the toy maker and all these old. It really is just like a nostalgia trip that they didn't really need. Like I feel like Shruti's doctor is interesting enough where he doesn't really need all these quote unquote gimmicks. They could have just had a really solid plot line like they have had in the past.
Yeah.
And I think they tried a little too hard to be like grandiose and big and bombastic, and they didn't really have to do all that. The doctors, I think some of the best doctor episodes are when they're dealing with like small problems small places with not a lot of stakes.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see the Doctor problem solve, and I don't think Shruti has gotten the chance to do that. I will dive into that.
Like I said, this is the finale of the season. It's a two-parter, but I decided to do one video because I'm not gonna do a video on each part because that's insane. But it is the finale, so with that, I will say that there's like a lot of rumors on the grapevine that maybe Disney Plus won't renew like their contract with Doctor Who. So it's kind of up in the air right now, which would really suck because of the ending of how it ended. But see, I'm hoping that someone picks it up. There's rumors that maybe Amazon Prime will pick it up because when Disney Plus signed it on, it was between Prime and Disney Plus. So we'll see. If not, we're kind of screwed.
I doubt it. I mean, they'll probably just go back to being BBC only, which.
Well, I mean, because BBC is the one that is working on it. Like, it was never like Disney Plus. Disney Plus just had the streaming rights, but BBC is the one that has to like look for a new partner to continue it because they can't fund Doctor Who by themselves.
Right. So what I think is probably going to happen if no one picks it up is they'll just scale back to what they were before, which is like a low budget sci-fi show, which might be a good thing.
Yeah, wouldn't be the worst thing. Because I feel like Doctor Who, the whole like bit was that it was like cringy and like low
budget
budget,
sci-fi.
yeah, low budget like if special effects. Anyway, I think we can start like talking about the actual episode now, which obviously means there's spoilers ahead. So if you haven't watched it, don't watch from here on onwards.
You made it to the finale, so I don't know what you're. Go back to the first episode, watch her reaction on the first episode of the season, and then come back here.
I didn't react to the first season though.
No.
So.
Watch the first season, then watch her video of the first reaction.
Watch New Who from 2005.
Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go back to Eccleston, the best Doctor. You're gonna go back to. Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go back to 1959. You're gonna watch the
original William Hartnell.
Yeah. Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go back. You're gonna read the light novel that inspired the.
I will be looking to my side because since it was like such a long 2 episodes, it's 45 minutes each, I believe. Or I even think the last episode was a little longer. I had to take notes because I was not gonna remember. I wasn't gonna take notes, and then I started rewatching. And I was like, okay, I remember this episode started like this, and it started completely different. I was like, oh shit, I forgot about that. So I had to take notes. But yeah, I'll be looking absentmindedly to the side, and then he's just here to give like his opinions and stuff. But yeah, ready?
Set.
Okay. Well, the first episode is called The Wish World, and it starts completely with none of the characters. It starts with Ronnie. I don't know if you remember, back in Bavaria in like the 1700s, and she's looking for a baby who is the 7th child of a 7th child of a 7th child. So apparently,
well, technically, it's the 7th son.
Exactly, 7th son.
7th son of the 7th son.
Exactly. So she's looking for that kid because apparently he has like powers or whatever, and we get told later on who he actually is. But for now, she's just looking for the baby, and she gets to the house pretending to be like a midwife, and she from the get-go is very like aggressive towards the family because she's like, what's the name? And they're like, oh, we were thinking of calling him Jonas. And she goes, that's terrible. Here's the real name. And the mom's like, no, that's my kid. And she basically just turns everyone into different things. So she turns the mom into like flowers, and the kids into ducks, and the dad into an owl. And she just leaves. She just eats the baby and leaves. And that's basically like the beginning of the episode, like introduction of the episode. Which to me was very random because the last thing we saw was the Ronnie like bi-generating, and then we're like starting with a random baby in a random forest. But it's the introduction, and that's basically they're giving us the premise of the episode, or like the big bad, I guess. But it starts like that, and then we skip forward to March 23rd, 2025, which if you've been watching my videos, you know that we've been trying to get back to May 24th, 2025, and we haven't been able to. But now we're back to May 23rd, the day before May 24th. And we wake up with the doctor and Belinda in bed as a married couple. And they get woken up by the alarm, and it's very suburban, like, oh, hello, honey, good morning. And they wake up, and there's like a little girl who comes into the room. Her name's Poppy, and that's the little girl that Belinda saw on Story and the Engine. And obviously we've seen Poppy before in the first season in, I don't know what it's called, but it's the Space Babies episode. And it might just be called Space Babies, actually.
I think it's called Space Babies.
But she basically walks in, and then we get introduced to Poppy, who's now their kid, which is weird from the get-go because the doctor's gay. And also Belinda doesn't have a kid.
Well, the doctor's like gender fluid.
Yeah.
So he's like into everything, I guess. He's
Yeah.
like Pen.
But this iteration, they tried to push for him being gay, and they wake up and they're like, good morning or whatever, and then they turn on the TV, and Conrad's on TV, and he's basically like, good morning USA, like he's a newscaster. He's like the only channel on TV.
So it's like a TV broadcast, like, good morning USA. Yeah, it's basically that. Like, he's on TV all the time. He's always talking. It's the only channel that we see. Obviously.
Yeah. I feel like from that moment, it felt like very like Truman Show. Like, obviously this is out of the ordinary. Like, something's going on, but watching him on TV was very like, oh, this is weird. Like, something's going on. But he's basically like, good morning, the weather's gonna be this, and remember to whatever. And the doctor and Belinda both are like, thank you, Conrad. And it's like, ugh.
Absolutely disgusting.
But then we get like the intro, like we always do, and then we go back to their house, and they're having like breakfast as a family or whatever, and they're talking like simple things, and Belinda's like, oh, tomorrow's May 24th, 2025, it's May Day, which, iconic name, May Day. Very foreshadowing.
Banger.
Very foreshadowing. But it's gonna be May Day, and she tells Poppy that she's gonna make some food, and she says a specific food, but I didn't write it down, so I'm sorry. But she says she's gonna make that. Is she excited? And Poppy says no, and a cup falls to the floor and shatters. And so it shatters, and they act like it's normal. Like, oh, it's okay, I'll get it. And then the doctor goes to the cupboard and gets another cup, and the cupboard's just full of like the same cup, the same yellow cup. So he goes to get another cup, and she picks up the cup. And like I said, they act like this is normal. Like, this is a regular occurrence that the cups just shatter.
So I noticed that the cup was in the middle of the table, and where it felt like right where it was, but under the table.
Yeah,
right?
like it didn't roll
so it didn't
over
and fall off the edge.
Yeah. I didn't notice that until later when they actually showed us why that was happening. I mean, it's the spoiler section. Yeah. What are you doing here if you didn't want spoilers?
Bob.
What do you have against Bob?
I told him.
Anyway, they basically just start their day. I have to explain why, like, the family that Ronnie was visiting turned into stuff. So basically, Ronnie said...
We're in Bavaria.
So I'm just gonna quickly mention it. So the Ronnie gets the baby, and she kisses his forehead and kind of like wishes these things to happen. So she wishes the mom was Violet. She wishes the kids were ducks, and she wishes the dad was an owl. So something about being the seventh son of the seventh son of the seventh son makes him like magical. But like I said, I'll say later who he actually is. But yes.
I was waiting my turn.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so I think the significance of it being, well, other than 777, that it was Bavaria. So the way that it is shown, it is like a forest, i.e., kind of Brothers Grimm. So I think the point is that this is kind of where folk tales from Germany are kind of born from. So they're all kind of weird, like the Little Mermaid turning into bubbles, that kind of thing. So the way that the power affects seafoam, sorry, the way that the people turn into objects or animals is kind of reminiscent of like old German folk tale, because it's in Bavaria. But I think it's also kind of playing on that historical context.
That's a good point. That's how we speak of my dude. That's why I told you to get closer.
I love my wife.
He's closer now.
I didn't magically grow.
We're back to the morning where they're just eating breakfast and stuff, and then the doctor gets up to, his name's John Smith, because of course it is. He needs a fake name. He's used the name John Smith before, though, when he, if you haven't watched Doctor Who, there was an episode before where he was with Martha Jones and he had to hide out, and so he pretended to be a professor named John Smith. And, well, he didn't pretend, he basically like took his memories, and he actually believed he was a human professor named John Smith. So this isn't the first time he's used this name before. I feel like that was maybe like a callback to that.
Moment.
Yeah, that only if you're a big nerd you remember.
Big nerd alert! Woo woo!
So he stands up and he goes to work, as he usually does, because he's the man of the family. And so, okay.
Scratch it. You didn't have to point it out.
Wait, they're gonna
So
see it in
loud.
the video. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. He stands up to leave to go to work, and he puts on his really cool bowler hat that I really like. Also, his whole like outfit is really cool, but
Fit.
his bowler hat is really cool. But he opens the door, and Ruby Sunday is waiting for him right outside the door, and she's like, "Hi, do you know me? Like, have you met me?" Which, honestly, in this context, I would also be like alarmed if a person just showed up at my door and it's like, "Hi, do you know me?" It's like, "Do you need me to call someone?
Are you on drugs?
Are you okay?" But she's like, "Hi, I don't know if you know me. I feel like I know you. Is your name the doctor?" And he goes like, "Oh, I'm not a doctor. Do you need me to call a doctor?" And she's like, No. Is your name the doctor?" And he's very confused, obviously. And Belinda at this point like walks out with Poppy, and she's like, and Ruby's like, "Oh, you're Belinda. Are you like his wife or something?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm his wife." And so Ruby starts like questioning stuff, and because he introduces himself as John Smith, "This is my wife Belinda. This is our child Poppy." And Ruby starts saying, "No, it's not. That's not your name. Your name's the doctor. That's not your baby. You don't have a baby. You're not married." And
Also, side note, Ruby did meet Poppy in the Space Babies
Yeah.
episode, so this is not the first time she's seen Poppy, so she knows, or I guess in this point, she realizes that can't be his baby because they had made that baby before.
they had met them.
Right?
Yeah, it sounded like you said maid.
They
Ruby
made
and the
it.
doctor have not slept together.
They made it.
They ate it?
They made it.
Ew! But yeah, that happens, and Belinda calls like the police. And so you get like a feel of like, okay, if people are questioning stuff or anything, they get the police called on them. so you kind of start getting an idea of like what the society like runs on. So after that, she runs into the neighbor, and the neighbor of John Smith and his wife is Mel, which, if you don't know who she is, that's an old companion. She's been in a couple episodes in this season and the last season. Not this season, last season. She works for Unit, and she is the neighbor. And Ruby runs into her, and she says, "Your name's Mel," and she says, "Yes. Do I know you?" But at this point, like, John Smith had already like come out, so she kind of just runs away so she doesn't get caught by like, the police and stuff. And so Mel is like making small talk, just like, "What was that about?" And I don't know. Anyway, she throws away her broken cup because I guess she also broke a cup today. And they look up and they see like these giant like bone creatures walking across like the city as if it's like completely normal. And he's like, "How could anyone like hate living here?" And there's just like giant bone creatures and a bone palace. And yeah, that's basically the introduction to this new city.
Yeah. Also, when they pan out, it shows that every other person was also taking out their trash at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like an overhead shot of a neighborhood, and every person is taking out the trash at the exact same time. So it's very much giving like Orwellian 1984. Sorry. Yeah, 1984 kind of equilibrium vibes where
Truman Show.
there's but it's also like they call it something. They call it like the Truth Ministry or whatever when she says she's gonna call the police. It has like a name. So it's very much giving dystopian. The government controls the people.
Yeah. After that, we cut to John Smith like walking, like getting to his office basically, and there's like a giant screen right outside his building with Conrad on it, because I guess Conrad just runs 24/7 on all screens. And outside outside the building, we have the wheelchair user employee from Unit. Her name's Shirley, and she's outside like asking for like money, and she doesn't work for Unit anymore. Well, I guess Unit isn't a thing anymore in this world, and so she's asking for money or whatever, and everyone's ignoring her. And then John goes into the actual office, and the actual office is what used to be Unit, but it has been like transformed into like an insurance company. And so you have like all the employees and everything, and John goes to sit with his like
desk mate.
And the desk mate is the soldier that we've seen a couple of times before. And the boss is Kate, or the manager, I guess. She's not. I guess she'd be the boss. The manager is Kate.
Well, okay. Kate isn't the boss. She's the floor manager, but she can't be the boss because she's a woman.
Which we'll explain soon.
Yeah.
We'll explain soon. Because again, it's like a very 1950s like idealized world. And so John kind of sits down. Kate's like, "You're 2 minutes away from being late." And he's like, "That's why I'm here. I'm not late." Because apparently they all start right at 9. They all start working. And so they kind of like chit chat around, him with his desk mate. I'm sorry, I don't know the soldier's name, but they start chit chatting around, and John gives him like advice on like how to ask Kate out, because there's been like a pseudo romance kind of hinting this whole time between them. Not just this episode. Yeah. There's been like hints that these two like are interested in each other. And so he gives him like advice, and he says, "Oh, but I don't know like what to tell her or anything. I don't know if she'd even be like interested in going out with me." And so John says, "Of course she would be. You're a very handsome man." And he like looks at him.
Yeah,
like,
there's like a record scratch.
Like,
what did you say?
What did you say?
Yeah.
You can't think that. You're a man. And so again, a very like 1950s idealized like world. And so John goes like, no, I just meant like you're probably like attractive to her or whatever, and tries to like get it up, but that interaction causes his cup to Shatter. And so here comes the coffee lady, which had come before to give him the cup. And the coffee lady is Susan Twist from the first season of this new Doctor Who era. If you're not familiar with her, you're gonna have to watch.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
If you've gone it's very hard to explain that episode. But it is the one with the dog that I've talked about before that I never recall their name. The dog god of death, I think
Anubis?
It is. No, it's not Anubis. And it's with an S. I have to search it up for every video.
Santar,
I can look it up. Sutek. That's the dog god. He's the god of death. And that episode is with her. And she's basically like a big techie brain. She's very good at technology. She creates a whole company of technology in that episode. Anyway, she comes to pick up the cup, the broken cup, and give him a new one. And then we go back to the house with Belinda and Poppy. And then Belinda's mom and her auntie come in to visit. And Poppy says something that's sassy. And the auntie says oh, don't worry, you have time to not beat that out of her, but educate her so she doesn't do that anymore, because obviously she has to be the perfect girl, to be the perfect wife, to be the perfect mother. And so Belinda's mom says, oh, Belinda was just like that when she was a little girl. I was in labor with her for 48 hours, which is insane. But the auntie says, oh, how long were you in labor with Poppy? And Belinda doesn't remember. And the mom is also I don't remember. I feel like I would remember because I would be there. But they don't remember. And that causes another shatter because they're both starting to doubt. And so we start getting the idea that every time you doubt something, it causes a shatter. Or they call it a slip.
Yeah, every time you don't remember something, or you feel what you're remembering isn't what it's supposed to be, things start not making, things start breaking. The cups start breaking, and your memories start feeling a little hazy, and that's when people call the police or the police.
They call the police if you communicate that doubt.
Right.
But if you start having a doubt, even mentally without speaking it out loud, it causes the slip where something shatters. And so I feel the shatter is just to get you back, just to be don't do that. And then you're oh, sorry. Just go back to what I was thinking. That it causes a slip. And this somehow overwhelms Belinda, because from there she kind of runs away into the forest to start screaming, which is very random to me because I feel she's had doubts before, but somehow this one was very
it was very odd. Honestly, it was it felt like there was a whole other scene that they cut off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of out of nowhere she starts running, and then she's in the forest, and then that's it.
But from that they cut back to Conrad, and at this point it felt very eerie to me, the episode, because you can kind of see cracks forming, and then Conrad keeps popping up whenever to remind you this is the perfect world. Conrad's here. We also hate Conrad, so but Conrad pops back up, and he's talking. Because he had started talking at breakfast, he had started giving this story about the doctor, and he's this is Doctor Who, this is our friend the doctor, and he's very much a Sesame Street-esque kind of guy, because he's giving stories all day, and sometimes he'll pepper in the weather or something, but he is talking about the doctor, and at this point he starts talking about Durrani. And he starts giving us a little backstory to it, and then we see Durrani flying by the doctor's office, and everyone around the office crowds against the window to kind of see it, because apparently it's just
famous,
a mystic being. And so they're oh, there she goes or whatever. And the doctor kind of says, I wonder who she is. And that kind of like the same way when he called the guy handsome, everyone's like, what do you mean who she is? And he kind of like fixes it fast. He's like, oh no, I mean she is who she is. Like,
yeah, like, oh, it's obvious who she is, but no one knows exactly who she is.
Exactly. So he's like, no, never mind. I didn't ask. He obviously doesn't want like the cops called on him or the.
I think it's called like the truth police. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. And so basically, they cut to. There's a lot of cutting in this episode. Like, we're basically running all around. So this time we go to Ronnie. And so Ronnie arrives into like the bone palace that we had seen before that they were staring at. And she runs into the other Ronnie, which is
the old lady.
Mrs.
I know,
Flood.
Mrs. Flood.
Our favorite person.
Yo, man.
She runs into Mrs. Flood and she asks her like how everything's going and everything, because they have like these robots that are kind of reading everyone's thoughts in like this community, and she's asking like how the doubts are going. So they're actually measuring the doubts, like the slips that are happening, and I guess they go in like a scale of 1 to 10. And she says, oh, we're doing very good today. There's a lot of 9s today. So a lot of people are having a lot of doubts. And so...
which apparently is a good thing.
Yeah.
Also, I will say the set design and practical effects in this scene are very good.
They're really cool.
Like the ink monster, the secretary things are like alien creatures whose fingers combine with the key. It's a really cool effect. That it's very clearly practical.
But it's not a keyboard.
It's
like
not a keyboard.
A lake
Yeah,
of ink.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Yeah.
So like those practical effects are really cool. The actual Bone Palace itself, the set, is really cool. I will say Ronnie's outfit, like the juxtaposition. There you go, big word. Between old Ronnie and new Ronnie is really interesting because like the old Ronnie, Mrs. Flood, is wearing very old-timey, simple, like elegant clothing, and then the new Ronnie is wearing like, ooh, I'm a badass, like leather jacket, leather trench coat, like more youthful clothing. So it's a very interesting dichotomy. I'm on fire with these big words.
Did you take the SATs or something?
The dichotomy between the old Ronnie and new Ronnie is really interesting, and the set design was really cool. I just wanted
Yeah, thank you.
to say that.
Thank you for adding to this video. And so she keeps just asking stuff. She's like, how's the baby? Because she brought the baby to the Bone Palace, and she says the baby's fine. And Ronnie had brought in mortadella from Italy. That's where she was. Which is a ham, in case you didn't know. It's a cut
Sandwich.
for a sandwich. She brings that and gives it to like Mrs. Flood. Just like make a sandwich. Because you can kind of see the dynamic between them where they're both technically the same person, but new Ronnie treats Mrs. Flood like a servant, basically, and she's just there. She's just a puppet to help me. And so later on, we do get like Mrs. Flood like complaining about this. She's like, oh, do this and do that, and I'm just here to do whatever she wants, and she complains about that. And that's actually the next scene. She's making a sandwich for somebody that we don't know. But later on, we do discover that she's making a sandwich for Conrad. And so she walks into Conrad's room. Conrad is with the baby. And Conrad's just basically like finishing a broadcast. And he says that he's tired and boo-hoo. And
Yeah. Oh, so we do see in this scene, as we walk in, we find out that the broadcast room is the same room where the baby is being kept. So essentially every time that Conrad is shown telling a story or talking on the TV, it's implied that he's kind of talking to the baby. Like he's basically being broadcast live all the time, taking care of the baby.
Yeah, and he's basically making wishes. So the room is just for Conrad to wish for this world, basically. Or at least that's what they're trying to imply. And so I did forget that Ronnie does take the Vindicator that the doctor has been using. And apparently... the fact that he's been like pinpointing different places has charged the Vindicator to 99% or something, and she puts it in like a huge clock that they have in the set, in the palace, that's gonna help with whatever they're planning with the doubts and everything. So
it's also this also falls in line with what I was talking about earlier. Like, it is a practical giant clock, which she then puts a practical Vindicator into, which I feel like could have been really easily, like, they could have cheapened out and just done a visual effect thing, and just had a giant digital clock or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's cool that they have like these practical effects in some of these scenes.
The Ronnie and Mrs. Flood also go into like an outside balcony, and she is like activating like these booby traps that she laid on there.
So she is setting up a mouse tool that we will come back to later.
The secret mouse tool.
Yeah. So we don't know what it is, but she's basically putting things in the balcony.
Yeah.
Around like the shape of along the wall, as she's having a conversation with Miss Flood.
Yeah, and we get a really like tense interaction between the Ronnie and Mrs. Flood, because Mrs. Flood says like, "Be careful," and the Ronnie says, "I'm not your child," and Mrs. Flood goes like, "You're technically my child. You came from me."
Yeah, something I didn't mention in the past episodes. I wasn't here, but I will say in this episode, I
that
don't.
Sounded bitter.
Yeah, it did sound kind of bitter. Well, I am bitter. I love you so much. So I don't understand why the Ronnie bi-generated. Every other doctor
they try to explain it later on, but I don't know.
I don't
if
get
it was good enough.
Up to this point, I didn't get it. I don't understand why. Like, I understand why the doctor bi-generated, because it's implied that because of how he interacted with Dr. Donna, then that energy kind of siphoned off into the doctor, which made him bi-generate. But the Ronnie doesn't have any interactions with Dr. Donna or the Shruti, for that matter, up until this point. So it's very odd that the Ronnie would bi-generate when every other Time Lord in the series has just regenerated like normal. So I don't know if they're implying that now every Time Lord is going to bi-generate moving forward, which is a little weird.
I will talk about that later, though, when they try to explain it.
And we can dive into that at some point. But I like, it's an interesting dynamic what they're doing in the show, but I also don't understand. They didn't do a very good job explaining why.
Yeah.
In a show about hokey pokey timey wimey crap, Sorry.
Stuff.
I mean, in a show about timey wimey stuff, it's very, like, most of the time they do a pretty good job of explaining the pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And like giving you a somewhat good explanation to what's going on. But with this, I don't think they did a good job at all. Like, they just like, oh, she did it too because plot. Yeah, it didn't feel very good at all.
Yeah. So. I will say I did forget this little thing, is that they need people's doubts, but they're particularly looking for the doctor's doubts, because apparently because the doubts are important, but the doctor's doubts could destroy the galaxy, I guess. And this is another scenario where they need the doctor because the doctor is a huge being or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they need it because she wants to find someone who is called the One That Is Lost, that they later on reveal who it is. I said later on.
No, censored.
Anyway, we get a shot again of, cut back to the outside of the office, and we get like a shot of one of the like bone creatures creatures kind of like stepping in the middle of people,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes through them. So it's implied that like the bone monsters don't actually, like, they're not there, I guess.
Yeah, like they're there, but they're not there. They're the Schrodinger's cats of bone doctors. Bone dinosaurs is what I meant to say.
Bone creatures.
Yeah.
And Ruby and Shirley are just like looking at it, and so they
Surely she would be looking. just
like, what a...
so
they kind of just like comment on it, and they kind of like figure out that they're both doubting, and they get scared at first, and they're like, oh, I have to go or whatever. And then Ruby turns around and she goes, are you Shirley? And Shirley goes, are you Ruby? And then they realize that they remember each other,
and then they make out.
I'm gonna take you out of this video.
They're like, oh my god, you're so cute.
No. Stop. But they talk about the fact that they're doubting. They talk about the fact that they're doubting.
They do.
And so Shirley takes Ruby with her, because they have like this little community that they've created where it's basically a lot of mostly disabled people, because again, we're in a perfect world, and I guess in a perfect world Conrad doesn't see disabilities, which we got a clue to on the episode where Conrad is in, which was Lucky Day, because he implied that Shirley was just like stealing government resources, so she was pretending to be in a wheelchair because she didn't actually need it, which she does. But you can kind of see that Conrad doesn't think that people like disabilities are real.
Yeah.
Because obviously he doesn't experience them. So
It's heavily implied he's an ableist.
yeah. So this whole community is like blind people, deaf people, wheelchair users, and all kinds of people. And so they're all there because they're like the invisible people. And Ruby says that she's never seen this before. And Shirley says, we've always been here. People just don't see us. And so...
A metaphor.
yeah, they're the invisible people.
Yeah, so basically it's like also a social criticism of how we're neglecting people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Sure. So it's also heavily... Here's where we get a little bit of peek into the curtain, because as Shirley explains that she takes medication and they're talking about their experiences, they also realize that their conditions aren't getting worse, and their medication magically appears. So all the things that they need to survive still happen, even though they're not actively doing it. So for example, Shirley says, oh, I used to have like a lot of pain and I don't take my medication, but I haven't taken my medication and nothing's happened.
Yeah. She also doubts the fact that she has like a really high-tech wheelchair, and she shouldn't. She lives on the street. So she's like, I don't understand why I have like this really good wheelchair and I have sciatica, but I'm not taking any medicine and I'm fine. And that shouldn't be like happening.
Yeah, so for these people, it's become a lot easier to kind of see the cracks because their daily lives are a lot more complicated. Meanwhile, in Conrad's world, they're not. Their lives are super streamlined. They have like these because
Conrad hasn't considered how their lives would be more difficult.
Right, because he doesn't care, because he doesn't see them as people, or he doesn't see their conditions as real. Then these people's lives are like they're basically homeless people in this scenario. Like they live in a homeless camp.
They don't fit.
So they don't fit into like regular society, but also because they are disabled, they know what their normal life experience should be for them to have like a normal day. They know that things aren't adding up.
Yeah, so a lot of the doubts that are happening in the world are from that community, and they like Janelle said, they see the cracks a lot easier. So the dream world is crumbling a lot easier because of them. And I was also gonna say that obviously they're all talking to each other, and Ruby is now included in this group, and they say like, I don't see you have any disability, so how are you like noticing these things? And at first she doesn't really understand how, but she says that she has these flashes of memories where she remembers where she dated Conrad and Lucky Day, and she remembers that she's lived through 2025 because in season 1, if you've seen it, she lived her whole life in 73 yards, and she lived through 2025 and it didn't look like this. So she remembers her past life, which is also kind of weird because it wasn't her life.
Yeah, so this is where we get into the weird, right?
Yeah.
So and I don't particularly love how they handled this, because the episode that Emmy is referencing is 73 yards is supposed to be like an otherworld episode where Ruby lived through a lifetime, and then her old self interceded in her younger self's lives to stop herself from living that life, right? So technically speaking, the Ruby we follow in the show is not the same Ruby that lived in that episode.
She wouldn't remember any.
So she wouldn't remember any of that, which is a really cool concept for that one episode. However, now they're using that Ruby's memories for that life she never lived to interject in this episode
and explain how she remembers.
To explain how she remembers, which in explaining this to you, I think I kind of realize now why. So the point is that the way this Conrad world is kind of existing and the bone creatures is because they're kind of dimensions overlapping, or realities, right? So the fact that she remembers it kind of becomes an indicator that this is a space between realities where she lived that life, but she also didn't live that life. So she has memories of a life she never lived, which is kind of breaking. It's adding to the breaking of the Conrad world.
Good job. Anyway, they finish the conversation by just like revealing to Ruby that they're not just there for like shits and giggles. They're actually planning something to take Conrad down, because they realize that this world is not real and that they need to find their way back to the real world. So they're basically like, are you in? And she's like, hell yeah, I'm in.
They're like, do you hear the people sing? And Ruby's like, it smells mighty French in here. Get the guillotine.
But she also has like a slip moment, because obviously she's talking about all of these things about like doubt and stuff, and she has to slip and like her cup breaks and they get her another cup.
Another cut. There's a lot of cuts.
Another cut.
Yeah. What I will say, this has been the season with the worst transitions. No transitions.
Yeah,
it's all like
been...
cut.
Yeah.
There's no beauty. There's no cinematography with the cuts.
He really likes transitions.
I love transitions. It's an art form.
And the trans community as well.
Damn. I like all the transitions and transitioners.
And those who don't transition.
And those who don't transition. Yeah. I'm a man of people.
But anyway, we cut back to the doctor, and he's now at home. And he's kind of just like mindlessly like watching TV in the background and kind of just thinking back to his day. And they did mention before that like around 6 o'clock is where the doctor kind of like most doubts, because he starts thinking about his day. And he starts thinking about it. And there's like a shot in between like Conrad talking of Susan again. And he kind of like looks up. But Susan doesn't say anything. I think Susan was just there so he would like look at the screen, because again he's like absent-mindedly. At this point Conrad is like background noise, and so he looks up and Conrad comes back up, and then it cuts again to, it like glitches out to Rogue, which if you haven't watched the first season, Rogue
Baby.
Rogue, played by Jonathan Groff, which is the love of Janelle's life.
So
Jonathan Groff, he was in the first season as a character named Rogue, and he's basically, I feel like he was like, well, he's a rogue. Like, was he like a time traveler?
Kind of like a time mercenary, similar to how Captain Jack Harkness was.
Jack Harkness, yeah.
So it's kind of reminiscent of that character. But he does travel through.
Yeah, and then that episode he gets stuck in, I guess, hell because he's talking to him from hell. He sacrifices himself to.
He's gonna sacrifice himself.
You were gonna say that.
In that episode, we don't know where he's sent.
Yeah.
We just know he's sent
disappears
to another dimension.
Yeah.
But we don't know where, we don't know when, we don't know anything. We know that the Doctor wants to find him.
But he hasn't done a very good job to find him. He kind of dropped the ball on that.
Negative points for Shruti.
But I was going to say that he sacrifices himself so that I think Ruby and him survive. And so, or I guess Ruby particularly.
Well, it's so, it's the Bridgerton episode from season 1. And it's so that the enemies don't escape. So it's either he escapes with the prisoners, which are consuming human life. I can't remember, but they're really dangerous. Yeah. So it's either Rogue escapes, but also the bad guys. What did I say? Rouge.
Rogue.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi? C'est soir. Rogue is stuck in a time trap or whatever, and essentially it's either he escapes and they also escape, or he goes with the baddies to another reality. We don't know where they're.
Anyway, he's been waiting for the Doctor, and the Doctor's done a terrible job finding his boyfriend.
Garbage.
They're in love, by the way. I didn't mention that. They love each other.
It was they found their love too soon. Yeah. 2 matches, set ablaze.
Right place, wrong time.
Yeah.
But anyway, he glitches.
Has a wife. Come on, get fake wife.
Belinda's a fake wife.
River is very real.
Oh, okay. He also married Queen Elizabeth I, so
that's fucked.
But anyway, he glitches back into the TV, and he's like, I don't have a lot of time. I'm stuck in this like hill world, but I have to tell you, like, tables don't do that. Just remember that tables don't do that. And he ends the message with like, I miss you and I love you and you haven't looked for me, but whatever.
He's like, I'm in Superhill also, which we don't know what that is. They've never explained it. I don't think we've ever been to Superhill, except for Supernatural.
Yeah. So, but that kind of like triggers something in the Doctor, because later we see him like literally on the table, just like looking at cups. He has like a bunch of cups on the table, and he's looking at the cups, and this is where we realize, or this is where they show us what's actually happening. And so
yeah, because every time prior to this, there has always been a cut away from the cup before it happens.
Yeah, you just hear the shatter.
You just hear the shatter. You don't actually ever see it shatter.
Yeah, and so he's just staring at the cups, and you see. Well, you don't see it at first. You kind of hear the shatters again. And then Belinda comes down because she is hearing all this like commotion, and she comes down and she's like, what's going on? And he says, just look at the cups. And we see that the cups kind of like not disintegrate.
They phase through.
They phase through the table and fall on the floor. And she says, yeah, that's a slip. And he's like, no. Look at this. And he puts more cups. And they all fall, and he says, tables don't do that. He said that tables don't do that. And Belinda's like, who's he? And he explains that there was a man on the TV, and he says that tables don't do that, and that I really liked him. Like, the Doctor says that he really liked him. And obviously, this is all too much for Belinda, so she calls the police.
Yeah, well, which, in context, you know, because you're a fan, you're like, oh, the Doctor's getting his memories back. But if you're Belinda, you walk into your kitchen, your husband is rambling about a man on the TV is off, he's looking at cups on the table, there's a bunch of broken cups on the ground, so she's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, she wasn't crazy for doing that.
Right, she's like, this guy is losing it. I need to call the police.
Yeah, they've also been educated that if someone was doubting to call the police. So she did what she had to do. And so the police arrive and they take the doctor away and, sorry, John Smith. And he says, no, I wasn't doubting. I was just asking questions or whatever. And they take him away. And then Mrs. Flood appears with Belinda's mom. And so Belinda's mom, she's like, what are you doing here? Belinda asks what you're doing here. And Mrs. Flood says someone has to take care of Poppy because you need to go. And they basically arrest her because they say that in order for her to realize that the doctor was doubting, it means she's had doubts herself, which doesn't really make sense to me because she called the police before for like Ruby,
right? And
they didn't like arrest her for that. So I feel like they just needed an excuse to like take them both,
right? And
so we get a cut again to Shirley, Ruby, and another wheelchair user. I'm not sure if they said her name, but she was in like the community, and they've arrived at the Bone Palace. They're kind of just running around like the base of the Bone Palace, which is kind of like the center where all like the office buildings are, because like the Bone Palace is like right on top where John Smith works basically. So they kind of run around, and Shirley shows Ruby and the other girl like an iPad, and the iPad somehow still has access to Unit, which it shouldn't be because, you know, but apparently iPads don't exist in this world because we're in the 1950s. And Ruby's like, what is that? And she says, this is like a computer and it works, and I have access to Unit, but for some reason it also has access to the Bone Palace? Question mark? Which she tries to like, she uses it to like monitor Conrad, basically, like the Conrad broadcast. So that's like a little shot to let you know like what's going on with them, but it's really small, and like we're cutting back to the Bone Palace now. And so we're back at the Bone Palace with Belinda and John and like the droids. And the droids look like the one from the last episode, Interstellar Song Contest. Like they look like those droids, and they're like soldiers or whatever, or the police. And they have to pass through like this gate, which I didn't really understand what that was for.
It's like an access gate. So like if you can only cross it if you have permission, essentially,
I guess. But it's not like a gate. It's literally just like a wall of light that you just pass through. And they both pass through it without any problem. So that's why I didn't understand why that was necessary, but whatever.
I guess it's like some people don't get in without permission. Since they wanted the doctor and Belinda there.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Then they could pass through. But later on, spoilers, I guess. Later on, they called back to this moment, and they're like, "Oh, we can't go in because we don't have access."
Yeah,
like
that's true.
We're gonna be stopped by whatever the light wall thing.
Okay, that's true. Okay, so they pass, and Belinda starts saying like, "I'm sorry for turning you in," and he's like, "You did what you had to do. Like, it's fine. Let's go." Anyway, we're back in the Bone Palace now with...
The Bone Palace. I'm the Bone Saw. Sí, son. I don't know what that was. I kind of blacked out here.
They get to like the center where we've seen them before, where like the androids are with the keyboard thing. And we get to the Ronnie and Mrs. Flood are there, and the Ronnie's trying to like stir the doctor's memories now because they need him to remember now. And they need him to remember so the Vindicator finishes charging. It's like 99% charged. They need like that one more charge. And so she starts talking and she's like, we've met before, and I know you know who I am. I know you've been doubting. I know you know, like, you remember the faces you've been before. You remember the lost one, which is the creature that they're trying to bring back. And she mentions like a sigil. They have like a door with like a sigil on it that's like a Gallifreyan sigil. And she talks about robots, and she talks about the TARDIS. Like, haven't you like wondered where your TARDIS is? and she's trying to like stir him, and obviously he's like going crazy because he's not supposed to doubt. He's been programmed to not doubt anything, so he's like going crazy, like, don't stop talking to me, like, you know.
And up to this point, we were watching it, and Remy was like, I don't understand why she's just telling him the evil plan. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then like they kind of explain it towards the end, where it's like,
Belinda goes a little crazy though, because she's like, I have to go back home. I have like a kid, and Ronnie uses this, and she says, you don't have a kid. She's not real. Like, you're not married. She's not real. And this is the second time they've been told this. And so the doctor starts to remember, and the thing is that he needs to remember before midnight, before it's May 24th. So this all needs to happen on May 23rd, and it's quickly approaching midnight. And so for some reason now they start dancing. Like, the Ronnie takes the doctor and they start dancing around the room, because apparently in Classic Who, which is an episode we haven't watched, they danced. And so this is to stir his memory again. And it does. He remembers the old Ronnie. And they reveal that like both the Ronnie and Mrs. Flood are the Ronnie.
okay, so basically, as they're stirring the memories, they have to do this before 12, because it is revealed that Conrad's world resets every end of May 23rd. So essentially, they're trying to explain this, and it's kind of implying that the Vindicator reaching midnight is a countdown to something that we don't know what it is. So the Ronnie is explaining, and in her revealing her evil plot, she reveals that the reason she is doing this is because the more the Doctor doubts, the more doubt they generate, the thinner the veil between reality and the underverse, which is what they call it, gets. So they can search the underverse for the creature they were looking for. And then, as Dremi had explained, they reveal that the Gallifreyan symbol that's on the wall and the creature that they're looking for is Omega, which is another classic Who villain from Gallifrey.
Which they keep pronouncing as Omega.
Omega? It's Omega?
So we started saying, oh my god.
Oh my god? They're looking for oh my god?
And apparently Omega is...
Oh my god.
And apparently Omega is the first ever Time Lord. He created the Time Lord.
So Omega is the first Time Lord, and he is the one that invented the TARDIS, invented time travel for the Gallifreyans. So he is like a really important figure in Gallifreyan history, but he was also sealed in the Underverse because he's a little racist. He's a little racist.
Also, the Time Lords he created were like very evil and very like authoritarian.
Yeah.
And so he was basically put away in like jail because of like what he had created. He hadn't created like better things. He had created an evil for the world, basically. Yeah. And he was down there. They didn't actually know if he was still alive, which the doctor mentioned. He was like, we don't even know if he's alive or if he's like still there. And she says, I'm pretty sure he is. Like, I feel him. He's alive. And she takes him outside to kind of see how the world is being destroyed, because it's basically like the world is opening, like on Stranger Things when like the roads were all opening.
Yeah, the Upside Down, or in No Way Home, where you can see the universe kind of open up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the effect, right? So they show the veil thinning, and you can see something below. It's not really super clear, but you can see that there's stuff down there. And then they also explain that the bone creatures are a sign that the underverse is kind of close, right? So that the veil is thin enough, because the bone creatures feed off of whatever comes out of the underverse.
The bone creatures were also like sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're right.
The bone creatures were also like a sign that the world was breaking. Not like what you said with the veil, that there were like glitches, which we saw before in an episode with Rose Tyler all the way back in the first season of like New Who, where Rose like goes back to see her dad before he died, and the fact that there was like an adult Rose and a baby Rose broke the world, and so there were like pterodactyls everywhere.
So, as Remy was saying, when Rose goes back to see her father, she decides to interact with her father, even though the doctor warned her not to, and she saves her dad from dying. So that makes a paradox universe or a Banshop universe where her dad is alive, and that's where the pterodactyl creatures come in. So it's kind of reminiscent of that moment, because we're dealing with like alternate realities and points in time where it's either paradoxes or it's not what it's supposed to.
Yeah. And so it is kind of reminiscent of that with the bone creatures as well. So I wanted to mention that. Anyway. We do get revealed here also who the baby is. So she starts mentioning like the gods that he has interacted with so far, which are all from this shooty era. We get like Toymaker, we get Maestro, we get Lux, we get Sutek, and did I write it down?
Yeah,
I wrote the dog one. And then the baby is Desiderium, who is the god of wishes. These have all been like gods. Like again, the Toymaker is like the god of games, and Maestro is the god of music, and Sutek is the god of death, and Lux is the god of light, and then this is the god of wishes, which is the baby. And
they call themselves a pantheon.
Yeah.
So basically,
that's been like the whole like story of.
Yeah. So that's been the overarching storyline for the New Who Doctors.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of New Who, which if you haven't seen, what are you doing?
I mean, New Who, like the shooty era?
Yeah, the shooty era.
The new Who.
The new Who. Anyway, the Doctor at that point is David Tennant, and he summons superstition at the edge of the universe, which invites the gods into.
It opens the
basically it opens the door for these gods to come in to our universe.
Yeah.
So essentially Ronnie is explaining this, and it's telling him like, you caused this, and I'm using your mistake to power
to do whatever I want
because I'm a
big bad.
I'm a big bad.
I'm the Ronnie.
I do what I want. So she's generating doubt inside of the Doctor and taking all of these this chaotic moments generated by the Pantheon to open the veil to find Omega. Because Omega is the father of the Time Lords. She kind of wants to rebuild the Time Lord race.
Yeah. And so they're outside, like I said before, they're looking at everything. And I forgot to say, we get a shot also of like, we get like a montage of like people reacting to the world being destroyed, basically. So we get like a shot of Belinda, we get a shot of like Shirley and Ruby. And Rose is in here.
Sorry.
Rose is gone.
It's Ruby Rose.
Her name's Ruby Sunday.
Oh! Can't Ruby Rose.
No one. Ruby Rose.
Steven Universe.
No. Ruby Rose is an actress.
It's Ruby Rose.
She's an actress. She's an Australian actress. Rose Quartz is not called Ruby Rose.
I know. Anyway.
It's okay. It's okay. And so we get like another montage of like all the faces, which I feel like I've said it before, we get like every couple episodes, we get like a reminder of like, these are all the Doctors that we've seen before.
Yeah.
But we get like a shot of the Doctors, and he gets locked out. Like they lock him into the balcony that he was in, and he's like, I remember, like, let me in, I remember now. And then we find out that the booby trap was like bombs on the balcony. And so they blow up and he starts falling into nothingness, or into like the world being destroyed, basically. And that's where the episode ends.
Boom,
He's
cliffhanger.
just falling.
He's falling, holding to the balcony. Find out next week on Doctor Who.
Gonna find out here right now.
Yeah, you're finding out right now. We're not fucking running away. So, reactions. Do you want to start?
No.
Okay. So I think they did a pretty good job with a lot of elements about this episode. What I did not like, and I don't like Belinda's role in this episode. Housewife Belinda is the worst Belinda. She has zero agency to the plot. Everything that Ruby does in this episode could have been done by Belinda, and have her play like a more integral part in the episode. But she's just basically,
I'm a wife and a mom.
Yeah, I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm a background character.
Which kind of sucks because
It does suck.
They've built Belinda to be this really independent woman.
Yeah.
And she's very strong, and she's like, she doesn't need the doctor to lead her anywhere. She kind of like figures it out by herself. And here she's just like helpless. She's just like, I need to get back to my baby.
It's a really weird decision. I don't know why they did it. Like it could have been a really interesting like critic of like hyper masculinity in society, and have like Belinda be a more active dissenting voice to like modern
She needs to fit
the modern family or whatever.
Yeah, she needs to fit the mold. But
Yeah.
as we'll talk about in the second part of the episode, she doesn't really like change that much. She stays in like that housewife mom
Yeah.
mode, which kind of sucked, but we'll talk about it.
So
later.
this felt like the beginning of the end for Belinda for me as a character. I just think they handled her so poorly. And then they brought back Ruby, which I had already not cared about for 9 episodes or however many episodes it's been. So they bring her back for this finale, and it's supposed to be like, oh, look at her, it's Ruby, Ruby's back. And I was like, I don't give a fuck about Ruby. You can drop her off a building. I don't care. She's gone. She's done. Like, I have no attachment to her. I'm sorry. She was not a very interesting companion, in my opinion. Her episodes were kind of weak.
Except for 73 yards.
There were
She
some
was
really good
in that
episodes.
one.
I will agree. There were some really good episodes. The bomb episode was a really good episode. Belinda's also in that episode. But anyway, that's
Not really.
but there's like, they take away Belinda's agency and they give it all to Ruby when Ruby is no longer the companion, and they boil down Belinda to being the doctor's wife, which is really weird and super uninteresting.
Yeah.
And then she's barely in the episode at all, which is really sad because this is her season, right? Like, this is her first season as a companion, and this is supposed to be her finale.
Yeah.
With the doctor.
Or at least like this season's finale.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, this is supposed to be her season finale with the doctor. Like, every character in their first season finale, they get like this really good moment, and I feel like they really just neutered her.
Yeah.
They
cut her wings.
Yeah, they cut her wings. They didn't give her anything to do, and it was really boring whenever she was on screen, which is really unfortunate because she was a really interesting character that they could have done so much with, but they didn't.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then the doctor is also kind of straight. Doctor is the worst doctor. I don't know how to explain it, but like when he's being flamboyant and energetic, he's such a colorful personality.
Yeah.
And then this episode,
Here's like
they just neutered him.
He's like businessman.
Yeah, businessman doctor is the worst doctor. He's super boring. He's not charismatic at all. And like, I get it. That's supposed to be the point.
Yeah.
Like, this is supposed to be the point. But it's a 2-part episode, and the first half is all exposition, and the characters you have grown to kind of like overall this season are all neutered, and then we get Ruby back for no apparent reason other than we needed someone to get Shirley and some of the other characters in the plot.
Yeah.
But they could have done a way better job of having the characters that are integral for this season to do that. So it just felt really lazy.
Yeah. That was your tip.
Thank you for commenting.
I don't really. No, because like I agree with Belinda's thing, but I feel like I felt it more in the second part. And there were like a couple things that I feel like weren't explained very well, but I feel like we touched on them while we talked. So I think we can just go to the next one. So
episode part 2.
The finale.
The finale. The finale to the finale.
It's called The Reality War. And this is really like the last episode of the season. And it opens up the same way the last one ended.
I was going to say, before we even start, Reality War. Banger name. No relevance to the plot of this episode whatsoever.
True, yeah.
But it makes it sound really cool.
I mean, they are fighting against like real life versus like dream world.
I guess. But Reality War, banger name. Yeah. Just throwing that out.
It starts with the doctor still falling on the balcony, just like we saw in the last one. But a door opens up on the balcony, and we get a shot of Anita. And Anita is a character that we saw on the episode Joy to the World, which was the Christmas special before the season started. And she was one of the best characters in this season. Anita is amazing. And she basically pops in and takes the doctor into the Time Hotel, which again was talked about in Joy to the World. And it's basically a hotel that's outside of time and space. And she takes him into the Time Hotel, and he kind of like starts remembering everything, because again, Time Hotel is outside of time and space, so it is on current like reality.
It's in the real reality.
Yeah.
So they are unaffected by Conrad's world.
As opposed to the fake.
As opposed to the fake reality. You say that like it doesn't make sense, but this does make sense in context.
It does make sense. And obviously the Rami goes crazy because this screws her plan up. He was supposed to die, and that would close like the time that she needed. But he's alive now, and his doubts are gone since he's not there anymore. So she gets like pissy. She's like, "What do you mean there was a door?" And she starts like yelling at Mrs. Flood. She's like, "You were supposed to like check on him in every context." And she was like, "I had Christmas off," which is funny because it's the Christmas episode. And so he's in the Time Hotel. We get a cut to the day starting over, and this is where we understand that the day just repeats itself like Groundhog Day until she gets what she wants, basically.
Right. So we also find out that she didn't actually want to kill the doctor. She was just throwing him in the balcony to, when the day reset, he would be kind of fall back to where he was before, so he wouldn't have time to do anything as he was falling from the balcony to the ground.
She was just like basically like putting him under a cup.
Yeah,
just
basically.
Like stay there. So we wake up and we're with Ruby. Ruby wakes up in her house, and Carla comes in. That's her mom, and she says, "It's almost May Day. It's May 23rd, and that's how we know that the day has started over." And then Belinda wakes up in her house, alone in the bed, because the doctor's obviously not there. He's in the Time Hotel. And so she's like, "Where's my husband?
What is my mind?
What is my mind?" And we get a cut back to the Time Hotel, where we actually get to react to Anita being back. And the doctor's like, "Oh my God, Anita, whatever." And she's pregnant, and she has a little baby on the way. And he's like, "How have you been? And I see someone noticed you." They became really good friends in that episode, Joy to the World. Yeah. And
because the doctor lives, so the doctor is stuck in a hotel in London, and he has to stay there for a year.
Yeah.
So he lives a year's worth of memories with Anita in this hotel.
Yeah.
So they become good friends in that year, and they give us a montage of all the moments they lived together.
Anita low-key falls in love with him.
Anita low-key falls in love with him, and then I guess now you but at the end of that episode, the doctor gets her a job at the Time Hotel.
Yeah. Because she's an amazing hotelier.
Right.
But yeah, she talks about what she's been doing this past year, and basically she reveals that anytime she had like some time off, she would pop in to check on him basically, and we get shots of like her going into seeing Matt Smith playing chess, and her going into, I don't know his name, but like an old doctor where he was about to die, and she pops into like him fighting with the Daleks, and it was kind of cool to see like her popping into like old episodes.
Yeah.
And she said that she popped into the Rogue episode where she saw him like dancing with Rogue, and that's where she realized that, oh, he's never gonna be interested in me, and that's where she moved on and she found a new man. And she explains that the hotel is in trouble because the hotel is set in 4202, the year 4202, but the world is supposed to end in 2025, so the hotel is going crazy because it's not supposed to exist basically.
So it's basically phasing away from reality because reality is ceasing to exist. And it's throughout the season we've seen moments where, like in the Interstellar singing contest, we see I forget the actor's name, but the British actor talking about how the world ended.
Ryland.
Oh
no, sorry, Graham Norton.
Graham Norton, yeah. We see him explain that the world, Earth, ended in 2025, and that so
humanity was wiped out.
Right, so we're getting tidbits of information throughout the season that there is no Earth past 2025.
Yeah.
So when Anita comes in with the Time Hotel, then it means that there's still a reality where the Time Hotel exists in 4202 Earth.
Yeah.
So she's basically existing but not existing until the Ronnie does her deed. 2020.
So if she really does destroy the world in 2025, then the Time Hotel stops existing.
Right.
She also she asks about the Ronnie, and she asks about the TARDIS and everything, and the Doctor's shocked because she was a human last time they met, and so that's when she explains, "Oh, I've been actually watching your whole life, so I know everything about you now." The Doctor starts explaining basically whatever happened last episode. So we got like a little recap. He explains everything, and he says, "I need you to take me back to the Bone Palace." And that's where she explains, "I can't do that because it's like surrounded, and there's literally no way to enter the Bone Palace." And that's
so that's the thing about
the
the crystal gates, the light gate. So essentially, it's like a force field, so it keeps everything that's not authorized out of it, including the Time Hotel, which at this point we kind of find out she can open a door to wherever and whenever she wants,
has a special key.
as long as she is allowed to. So this is kind of like the plot saying, you can just open a door in there and fix the problem. No.
Yeah. So she does open a door into Poppy's room, and he kind of goes from there. And so Belinda hears this, and she's like, "Who's up there?" And John's like, "It's just me, don't worry." And then he comes down as he normally would, but his outfit changes into something that's not normal, something that's Doctor-esque, which is basically just a pinstripe vest and a skirt with pants under it.
It's a cool outfit.
So it's a really cool outfit. And like a white shirt underneath. And he comes down, and obviously Belinda sees that, and she's like,
apparently that's not allowed.
You're a man and you're wearing a skirt.
He's like, "That's gay, bro. What are you doing?"
It was really weird because his outfit changes as he's walking down, and he doesn't have that ability. like, he can't just change outfits.
Okay, let me be devil's advocate. I'll defend it. So I think what was happening is
it because of the reality?
Right. So he's basically like breaking Conrad's world for himself. So it's basically showing that he remembers. So now he's no longer John Smith.
He can do whatever he wants.
He's back to being the Doctor.
Yeah. And so he has this amazing outfit on. And he comes down and he talks to Belinda and he's like, and he kind of takes Belinda and Poppy into the Time Hotel, which was very risky because, again, the Time Hotel is outside of reality and Poppy isn't real. And so he was kind of afraid that Poppy would disappear, but she's fine. Belinda and Poppy go into the hotel and Belinda immediately remembers everything because, again, the Time Hotel is out of reality. So her memories are unlocked and she remembers everything except, obviously, for Poppy, because Poppy isn't her daughter. But she's like, wait, but we have a daughter. And the Doctor keeps mentioning how this is important. Like, it's important that Poppy is real, which is revealed later on. But he keeps mentioning, and that's amazing. Like, it's amazing that Poppy is here and that we made her in a single day.
Which I don't understand, because Poppy is real. We've seen Poppy in the Space Babies episode. So there is a baby called Poppy who exists in reality, in the future. So I don't understand why they keep kind of implying that she doesn't exist. She only exists because the Doctor and Belinda had a fake baby in the fake Conrad world, when we know there is a space baby called Poppy that exists that looks just like this little girl. Yeah. So
it's just this iteration of Poppy shouldn't exist.
Right. So I don't understand why they keep saying that, because technically she does exist.
Now you're being picky. Anyway, they are in the Time Hotel and they open a door into what used to be Unit, and they go in, and obviously he's still in his outfit, and Kate is like, John Smith.
Right, so they go the office, his work office that is now the unit building office. That was his new work office that is now the Conrad
insurance company.
Yeah, insurance company.
Yeah, so they open the door and he just kind of goes in and he's like, hello everybody, I am here. And Anita starts opening doors like all across the unit office from like different points. And it's basically to like let reality in. And so reality starts rushing in and everyone starts remembering who they are, what this is. And there's a really funny moment where he's like, the soldier's like, I'm wearing polyester. And Katie goes, I'm wearing tweed. And then Susan Twist goes, I'm wearing nylon. But they somehow turn Unit into Unit again very quickly.
Well, it's okay. So the Doctor we get a classic Doctor speech moment.
Yeah.
And as he is giving the speech, stuff starts like regressing back to what it was previous to Conrad World. Yeah. So like as the Doctor moves around in the office, things start returning to what they were before.
Yeah.
So like the desks had typewriters in them.
Now
so
they have computers.
The typewriters start becoming computers again. And the wooden desks start becoming the metal desks again.
And something very important happens.
Something very important happens.
Rosie appears.
Tell him. Who the fuck is Rosie?
Rosie is Donna's daughter.
Rosie O'Donnell.
No.
Donna's daughter.
Rosie Noble. She appears and the Doctor kind of realizes that she wouldn't exist in a Conrad world because Conrad wouldn't understand trans.
Yeah, since he doesn't believe in trans people. Then
Rosie disappeared.
So now Rosie's back.
She reappeared now. Yeah. And so the Doctor kind of says, oh, one more thing. And he brings Belinda and Poppy out. And he introduces them as Poppy as his daughter. And Kate's like, now you're really messing with me. Yeah. Like, that's not real. But Kate takes the computers that are now real again, and she activates these chips that all unit employees have. And so Rose is chipped, so she starts remembering, and Shirley starts remembering. And so everyone basically just comes back to you.
Mel starts remembering.
Sorry, I keep forgetting Mel. But
Mel is important because Mel was the companion when the Ronnie was first introduced.
Correct.
So it's also a callback to like her moment.
Era.
Her era with the Doctor.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then we come back to Conrad, and there's a very uncomfortable like interaction between the Ronnie and Conrad, where he's like basically like, "Yes, mommy, I'll do whatever you say."
It's very weird.
And she's like, "I could eat olives off those dimples," and it's like, stop.
Absolutely disgusting.
But basically, the Ronnie asks Conrad, because he has like control over the world, so she's like, "I need you to find the Doctor," basically. And I guess this is something he can do because it would be like finding an anomaly, I guess. But I don't think he can see the world.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't really explain.
Maybe
that.
just like wish that he could find the Doctor.
If he could wish it, I don't understand.
I feel like she could also do that.
Yeah, just kiss the baby.
Basically, they're just back in unit talking, and they're trying to explain like Poppy, and Ruby remembers Poppy because she was in the Space Babies episode, and she's like, "But we saw this baby in space." And Belinda says, "What does that mean? Does that mean Poppy's not real?" And the Doctor says she is real because she's here, which is why it's amazing that she's here again, trying to reiterate that this isn't normal. Like, this shouldn't be real, but it is. And so the Ronnie appears, and she's like, "Oh, you could have gone anywhere in the universe and you went down the block." And he just kind of laughs. He's like, "Everybody, this is the Ronnie." And the Doctor kind of asks her, "How did you even like find me in the first place?" And she says, "Oh, I just looked for like a blonde human who was bored with her life, basically, and I found you." And how? And that's where they like reveal that Mrs. Flood is also the Ronnie. And Ruby says, "That's my neighbor," and Belinda says, "That's my neighbor," which we mentioned before, because Mrs. Flood is somehow both their neighbors, even though they don't live in the same area. So basically, that's where they let us know that Mrs. Flood has been like monitoring the Doctor and his companions.
Yeah. Well, it's revealed to them because we've been able to see this whole thing, and we saw when the bi-generation happened. Mm-hmm. So we know that the Ronnie and Mrs. Flood are the same person. So this is just a moment for the characters in world to find out that the Ronnie and Miss Flood are the same person, and that this person that Ruby trusted and Belinda had as a neighbor, and you know, these people that they interacted with wasn't actually a human. It was just another Time Lord.
Yeah. The Doctor also asked Ronnie how she's even alive. Different lighting. The Doctor also asks the Ronnie how she's even alive, because we've been told 1,000 times about the Time War and how the Doctor's supposed to be the only Time Lord left, even though we've already met 2 Time Lords. The Master was alive, and now the Ronnie's alive. So that's 3 Time Lords. So I feel like he's been missing a couple Time Lords.
You're miscounting, my guy.
But the Ronnie says some like BS about like, "Oh, I just like altered my biology and then I like escaped."
Is that it? I thought it was the bangle thing.
No, the bangle is how she moved, because the Doctor then asks, "How did you escape though? I have the only TARDIS." And then she showed the bangle, and she's like, "Oh, this is a time ring." And apparently that's like a thing that like kids use to time travel. So he's like, "Haha, little toy." And she's like, "It worked."
Yeah, which also begs the question, if she got away with a kid's toy, no other Time Lord got in a TARDIS or used a thing or a child or anything? No? Okay.
Yeah. And so Kate, they talk about like why this is happening, and they mention Omega, and And then Kate says that her father, which was the Brigadier, which is also like an old companion of Classic Who, interacted with Omega, which we know Omega appeared in like the Classic Who episodes. And she says that he was dangerous and he was put away because he created like a bad race of Time Lords.
Yeah, so basically the Omega wanted to make a perfect Time Lord race.
Yeah.
So he's basically a space Nazi. He's like
He's like the Daleks.
He believes in like race purity and that Time Lords are superior to all other races and they are like the perfect beings or whatever.
And so Mel asks if because she wants Omega back so she can remake the Time Lords basically, and she wants to create a new race of Time Lords. And Mel says, if that's the problem, why don't like the two of you make new Time Lords, because you're Time Lords. And which is a very nasty question. Like I wouldn't want to.
Yo, what are you?
But basically they explain that they're sterile. They are not able to have kids, and that's why Poppy is so important, because she shouldn't exist. And they Rosie asks that wouldn't that make Poppy a Time Lord? And the doctor says, yeah, technically, but Ronnie comes in with her Nazi ways and she's like, she's impure. Look at her mom. She's human. And that's yucky.
She's black.
No.
No. But they did imply, I don't know enough about old Who. I guess we can. They kind of imply that the doctor made all Time Lords sterile as a way to like kill them off, but slowly, like so they could live their life.
The Time War ended. The Time War. Again, we haven't watched it, but what we've understood from like the few times they've mentioned it through like the seasons is that it was a war between the Time Lords and the Daleks, and I guess like a couple other things, and it ended in a huge like explosion that killed off all the Daleks, which we know it's not true because they've been here every season.
They've been back.
And killed off all the Time Lords except for the Doctor. And this was a really heavy thing that happened to him. It was so heavy that he had to regenerate from the Doctor he was at that time, which he doesn't even count in his regenerations. He calls it the War Doctor. And he had to regenerate because he had to like forget it. Like he was that Doctor just for that war, and then he stopped.
Well, it's also implied that he was the one who caused the explosion.
Yeah,
so like
exactly.
he killed off his own people.
Yeah.
To protect the universe from his people.
Yeah. So that explosion made them all like sterile and they can't regenerate. And that's not regenerate, reproduce. And then that's where he kind of mentions that he has a personal theory that the bi-generation is the Time Lord race trying to conserve itself by basically multiplying the Time Lords. But that's basically like that's not like a real.
It's also
that's his like theory, basically.
What I was gonna say is that's a really cool theory if it's ever happened before, but it just started with him because of what happened with Donna and Rosie. So again, it's like a really cool theory if it had any real like backing from the plot for any other Time Lord other than himself. But we know from Jodie's Doctor 13, that the Doctor is the Timeless Child, which is a different being to what Time Lords are. It's the first Time Lord, it's like essentially a being from another dimension that can regenerate infinitely. So we know the Doctor's not normal. So if the Doctor bi-generates, then it's like, okay, the Doctor's already an anomaly, so this kind of makes sense with what they've explained so far in the world. But for another Time Lord to bi-generate, it doesn't make sense with the sword. Like, they haven't provided a reason for it. They haven't provided a real-world explanation to why the Ronnie is now the only other Time Lord. I guess she's the only other Time Lord in general. But the only other Time Lord to have ever bi-generated because we know that the Master, which we got in last season with Jodie, with the 13th Doctor, didn't bigenerate when he died. He just regenerated, and we don't know what they regenerated into. We also know that the golden tooth from the toy maker from the first episode is the Master. She was the Master was sealed in that tooth. That tooth was taken away, so we don't know where the Master is either. So there's just a lot of things that have been set up by this season that have not been explained. Yeah, the golden tooth. The toy maker said. Toy maker. Yeah, the toy maker said he played a game
right.
with the Master.
Yeah, and the Master was a tooth.
Yeah. So
that's
again,
implying that the Master might come back.
The Master's gonna come back at some point. But again, it's like they keep setting up a lot of things and they're not giving explanations to anything. So it's very unsatisfying when a lot of these moments happen in the season because they just don't explain them. Yeah. It just happens, and then we're hinging on the expectation that maybe they'll answer it in the future, which is really, really lazy. Thank you.
Good job. So basically the solution is to make Conrad's world go away. To finish the wish, basically. But if that happens, Poppy disappears. And if it doesn't happen, then we continue living in Conrad's world.
Until Omega's free.
Until Omega's free. And then Belinda doesn't want Poppy to go away. So she's willing to sacrifice everybody, I guess, over her fake baby.
Yeah.
But sure. But she has memories, so Poppy's real. And so they basically, the Ronnie just like, whatever, I'm gonna continue what I'm doing because this is already charged up, so I can do whatever I want. And so she leaves to go back to the bone thing.
The bone zone.
The bone I did forget to mention that the Doctor tries to like Sonic her, and she Sonics him back and like pops his Sonic off. And so she leaves, but what the Doctor had actually done was like copy her coding, and so it doesn't need to make sense.
Sonics do that now.
So the Ronnie turns the bone creatures towards Unit so that they think that Unit is an enemy and they start attacking Unit.
Yeah, so technically she doesn't she doesn't actually turn them against him, but since they remember they are an anomaly and the bone creatures eat anomalies. So they basically just made a buffet in the middle of town for the bone creatures, and the bone creatures are like, yummy treats. So they're going that way because they're hungry.
And so they start like getting ready basically for a war against like the bone creatures. And the Doctor again copied her code, so he somehow sonics the little scooter that she was flying in the last episode to him, because otherwise he can't enter the Bone Palace. And before he does that, though, he talks to Susan Twist to see if she can create a box that's out of time and space, so that Poppy can go in there just in case the wish goes away. Maybe Poppy will survive. And so she creates that box, and he explains like Poppy has to be in there, and if we're successful, like hopefully she'll be fine, and if we're not successful, then she'll obviously be fine. And Belinda's like, this is where it's iffy, but like I guess because he's like her mom, she's like her mom. She says she's not going in there alone, I'll go with her. And the Doctor explains, if you go in there with her and we're not successful, you're just gonna stay in there forever, and you're not gonna age or anything, but you're gonna stay trapped in there because no one's gonna remember that you're in there. And she says, but I'll be with Poppy. I was like, okay girl, but like
yeah, zero thoughts behind those eyes.
But whatever, she goes into the box with Poppy and she just waits.
Which it just felt like they didn't know what to do with Belinda, so they put her in the box to not have to deal with giving her something to do.
Yeah. And so the Doctor says goodbye to them and hopes for the best, and then he gets on the little scooter and he goes into the Bone Palace to again confront Ronnie. But when he gets there, the Ronnie's like, don't you want to see like Omega and like see what's been going on if he's even still alive? And the doctor says yes and just lets it happen.
Because why not? I don't understand.
The Vindicator has the power of like 1 billion supernovas, so that's how it's powerful enough to bring back Omega. And so it opens, and like this giant creature comes out.
It's like a giant baby rat.
Like a skeleton.
Yeah, it's really disgusting to look at.
And the Ronnie's like, what the hell is that? Who are you? And he says, I'm Omega. And the doctor explains that since he's so old, he's turned into a legend. And so he's like a titan from like Greek era. Greek era? Sure. He's like a titan. So he's basically a giant monster that can't be stopped. And so the Ronnie realizes she made an oopsie.
Yeah. Well, so essentially, since he's been... So they explained that the Underverse is where all, like, beliefs live. So, like, hell and heaven and the Pantheon and all these things that we kind of have beliefs in exist. That's where they dwell, right? So they're not in reality. They're in the Underverse.
Yeah.
And since... Omega has been down there for so long, he's kind of become a myth of his own, which has transformed him from the Time Lord that he was into this like weird monster, boogeyman creature. Because Omega doesn't exist anymore, he is now what people imagine Omega to be when they think of Omega. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then simultaneously, they also have Ruby going into the Bone Palace through like a machine they made that I guess goes against the Bone Palace's like limits. And her mission is basically to go talk to Conrad and trying to talk him out of it, which I don't know why they had faith in this plan when she couldn't talk him out the first time.
Yeah. Racist be rasisting, I guess. Like, they were like, ooh, the power of love is gonna bring you close to him and you're gonna change his mind. And and I'm like, he's a fucking racist. I don't know if this plan's a good one,
guys. He's a racist, misogynist, ableist, like all the ists. All
the ists.
Homophobic too. But all the icks. And so while they're fighting with Omega over here, she's talking to Conrad over here, and they're both happening at the same time. And obviously, she's not able to talk Conrad out of it. And so we cut back between them. So they happen, like I said, simultaneously. And Omega grabs Ronnie and he chomps her down. Like, she's gone now. Well, one of them is gone.
Yeah, after Omega chomps down on the Ronnie, Mrs. Flood is like, ooh, sucks to suck. Peace out. Puts on the time bracelet and yeets the hell out of there.
And the doctor's like, cool.
Now I gotta deal. Awesome. Now I gotta deal with Death Baby.
And so he kind of like says, Omega, the doctor, and Omega remembers him, and he's like, oh yes, the doctor, my child, or whatever. And he's like, I'm gonna defeat you, and Omega's like, no, you're not. And he says, if only I had a weapon in plain sight. And then he like bumps into like the Vindicator in the back, which again has the power of 1 billion supernovas. So with that, he shoots at Omega.
Yeah, so he takes a Vindicator, which at this point is not a gun, and converts it into a gun in real time. Like, he just goes,
it's an antenna,
and makes it a gun and shoots the baby monster, which is bananas. In a show about time travel, this is the most crazy shit that has happened this entire show. He just makes an antenna gun out of nowhere. But
sure,
we take those, I guess.
But the like ruckus makes the whole like Bone Palace like shake, because obviously it's a giant monster being pushed back into this portal. And so Conrad gets distracted. He's been pointing a gun at Ruby this whole time.
Yeah, cut back to Ruby, gun.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Conrad gets distracted and Ruby kind of like Cause I didn't explain how she got there.
Yeah.
It was like a transportation device, basically, like a
You did say that.
beep, and she transported
Yeah.
in there. She transports to like behind him, and now she has like the baby in her hands, and she makes a wish. And she wishes for Conrad to be happy, which is not something he deserves, but
Garbage.
sure.
Garbage.
She wishes for Conrad to be happy, and he kind of like disappears from there because he had communicated before that he wasn't happy there. And so he disappears basically, and he's good to go. Like, he's not a problem anymore.
And to be fair, they do have like this moment before Ruby makes that wish where they talk about like their relationship and what happened, and you know, our relationship was genuine, and you know, you
Like,
you
I saw-
have daddy
I was
issues.
there,
Yeah. Like you never talked about your dad or your mom. I can't remember which. And you have daddy issues, and you know, this is you trying to be a good father or whatever. And I can see it. You were being good, even though you're a piece of fucking shit and you're garbage.
She mentioned that he could have made any kind of world. She expected him to make a world with like beers and trucks and women, and he made a world where everyone had like a family and had food and everything. And Conrad said that he just tried to model it after what the doctor told him when they last interacted, where it was that everyone just wants to be like loved and fed, and
Right.
you know.
So like it's trying to show us that Conrad, even though he's a disgusting garbage piece of shit human, still tried to do something good when he was making his Conrad world.
Yeah.
So Ruby, having her soft, mushy heart be pushed around like a button, decides to make a wish and make him happy. Which I will repeat once more is doo-doo. Is garbage. He deserves to be shot.
Jeez. Are you okay?
Conrad's the worst. He got away with it.
It's okay.
The worst. He's the worst.
It's okay. And she basically makes a wish so the wish disappears. So she kisses the baby and she wishes for the wish roll to be done. And so the doctor basically shoots Omega back into the Underverse.
Go back in the hole.
And so everything starts crumbling around, obviously, because the Bone Palace isn't real. But Connor's room is real, because Connor's room this whole time has been
The TARDIS.
the TARDIS.
That was so bad.
So Ruby appears inside the TARDIS with the baby, and
The crib. It's important later.
and the doctor remembers when Ronnie asked him, like, haven't you wondered where your TARDIS is? And somehow that means that the TARDIS is Conrad's room. And so I forgot to mention, like in the first episode, but it's okay,
But you forgot.
that they show the doctor that Conrad's there
Oh.
and that he's the one making the wishes.
Yeah.
But they explain about the baby and whatever. And so basically now they're both back in the TARDIS and they fly back to Unit to check on Belinda and Poppy. And so they open the box and Belinda's standing there, and then they pan down and Poppy's there.
Whoa!
She's still alive.
Poppy's alive. Poppy's a baby alive.
And then they fly back to Ruby's house. They give Carla the baby.
Not Poppy.
No, the baby.
The other baby. Desiderium.
Yeah, Desiderium. They give her the baby, and because the doctor wished for no more wishes, and so now it's a regular ass baby. And he even starts crying which they mentioned before that he never cries. And he starts crying like a normal baby. So now he's a normal baby, and obviously his parents are from the 1700s, so they're long dead by now. And so they give it to Carla. Also, they're flowers and an owl, so they're not gonna be very helpful.
Yeah. Which let me interject once more. I thought what they were going to do is, since the doctor had the power to make a wish go back to whatever, or like no more wishes, I thought that they would just go back to 1700, 600, whatever, And the mom, the dad, and the kids would just be back to normal because there's no more wishes, right? And they became creatures because of the wishes. But we're gonna keep German baby in London to 2025.
They cut the bloodline there.
Yeah.
And
family's gone.
But they give the baby to Carla because obviously she's a foster mom. And she says, but there's like papers and stuff, and it's like he's from the 70s, that he doesn't have papers. So they're like, don't worry about it, Carla, this is your kid now. And they call him Joseph. And Carla asks him, like, what are you gonna do now that you have like a baby? And Cherry says something really funny. She's like, I pity that child. But Carla's basically like, you can't just like go hopping around the world now that you have like a baby, because you can't go like on adventures with her. She could be in danger. Like, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
And then they're back in the TARDIS with Ruby and Belinda, and they're basically talking about that, like, what are we gonna do now? And I really want to go like exploring with like Poppy. They start like talking back and forth.
Yeah, so Ruby, Belinda, Shooty, and Poppy go into the TARDIS. They walk the long hallway. Ruby and Poppy stay by the crib. So they put Poppy in the crib, and Rose is kind of giving her back to the crib and Poppy. And then Belinda and the Doctor are making plans back and forth.
Yeah. They take off like Poppy's little like bomber jacket because I guess it's really warm in the TARDIS. And they start talking back and forth, passing the jacket back and forth and being like, we could go here or we could go here. And then as they're talking, you kind of hear them, like the plans start changing from like the three of them to the two of them, to like him and Belinda. And then the jacket keeps getting smaller and smaller while they pass it back and forth until it completely disappears. And they like land on like, oh, we should go to Neptune, like just me and Belinda. It turns into them talking about them too, traveling. And Ruby has been watching them do this over and over, and she notices that the jacket is gone now. And so she looks into the crib, and the crib's empty. And so she asks, where's Poppy? And both Belinda and the Doctor turn, and they're like, who's Poppy? And she says, what do you mean, who's Poppy? The baby, who's Poppy? Where's Poppy? And she's your daughter. And they start laughing. They're like, we don't have a daughter. Like, and Ruby's like, no, but there was a baby right here. There was like a baby named Poppy. And the Doctor remembers, and he's like, oh yeah, we went like a space baby. I think like you're confusing. He full on gaslights
100%.
Ruby. And so he's like, there's never been like a baby here. And so they go, he like remembers that he has to like, the last step to like fix the timeline is that he has to throw the little like star certificate from the first episode of the season back into the universe so that the robots find it, and that like closes like the gap of like this whole storyline. And so when he's walking back, we look at Ruby, and Ruby says, but what about like this cot? And she turns, and the crib's gone as well. And so she keeps going like, I swear, like there's a baby. And so whatever, they return to Unit. They're basically giving Ruby a ride back to Unit. And they get to Unit, and they're like, hey, we did it, everything's good. And he asks if everything's back in order, and they tell him that like there's like a couple things that are like kind of off. So like the border between Sweden and Norway, I don't know the borders.
Yeah, a border between two countries is like a few centimeters
and
apart.
teal is slightly bluer, like stuff like that. Yeah. And Ruby's like, yeah, but what about Poppy? But now she asks like the whole unit. And they're like, who's Poppy? And she says, you don't remember a baby being here? And everyone's like, no. And she turns to the robot, and like the robot secretary.
The Knox, or whatever it
is. Sure. And she's like, do you have any like records of a baby being here? And he's like, no.
Well, a baby being here on May 23rd. So she's like, oh, do you have any records of like his child being here on May 23rd. He's like, no
Yeah.
records exist, whatever.
Yeah, and so no, they say no. They had also shown Conrad. Conrad's like a cook now, and he's like a dishwasher, and he's super happy. Doesn't
Garbage.
deserve, but sure. But she's like not convinced. She's not letting it go, and so the doctor's like, Ruby, you need to let it go. Like, you're not remembering correctly. And she's like, okay, but teal is a little bit bluer, and this border's moved. Isn't there like a way that my memories are correct and that this one thing changed?
Yeah, and she also was like, Susan Twist made this box
Oh yeah.
for Poppy. Like, I know this. Why would I know this if it wasn't real?
And
like,
Susan-
why would I remember that Susan made this thing?
And Susan says, oh, there is a box in floor negative 10. And
But I made it for us to escape.
Yeah.
And then Ruby's like, you didn't do it for that. You did it for Poppy, to
Yeah.
keep Poppy alive. Because, and then how would I remember this? How would I know this if Poppy wasn't real?
yeah, and she also says, like, to try to, like, the last thing to convince the doctor, she says that babies disappear all the time. It happened with me. Because back in the first ever episode we see of Ruby, she disappears because of some timey-wimey thing. But she stops existing, basically. And the doctor does something to bring her back to reality. And she says, it happened with me. Like, why is it so out of this world to think that it could happen to Poppy? And Belinda turns to him and she says, you also rescued me a couple of times. Back in her first episode, you went through her timeline as well and saved her a couple times. And so he's like, okay, so this could be real. We're missing a person. We're missing Poppy. And so they don't really remember her, but he says it should be real then because you remember her.
Yeah, and he says, like, even if the universe... So, basically, what they landed on was the universe is off by, like, 0.6
Yeah. A small
centimeters.
degree,
Yeah, like, the universe is off by however centimeters the border had moved. So, it's, like, a very small number. And the doctor...
But it was enough to make Poppy
disappear. Right. So, then the doctor says, okay, well, if even one person ceases to exist, then that would have been worth it enough for me to... fix it.
Yeah. But this is where I went on a full rant while I watched this, because apparently the only solution to this is to use his regeneration energy and put it in the TARDIS to shift everything that degree that's missing and kind of unite everything so everything's back to normal. And I was pissed because that means that Shruti is leaving and he's only had like 16 episodes, where most doctors have 3 seasons, and each season has like 20 episodes, like 12 episodes. But still, it's like,
yeah, they did him
You
real
barely
good.
gave him time to be the doctor, and I feel like this season he was really coming into being the doctor, and now he's gone. Well, he's not gone. He's
Not gone yet.
gonna be leaving. And-
Also, I will say, they make it seem like the only way you can get that amount of power is by regenerating, right? But they also just showed us a Vindicator that has the power of 27 billion whatever suns that can shift reality so that we can see the underverse, but we can't stick that shit in the TARDIS and move the universe 6 inches to the left. Like, the way energy works in this universe doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. It pisses me off that they are using this as an excuse to like regenerate Shruti when they have just now, for the plot, used a device that literally ruined reality that the doctor made. So he could just make it again and do it again. Get triggered.
But yeah, basically he goes into the TARDIS and he makes the whole speech that we're all used to when a doctor is about to leave. And he says, I was really getting used to this like body, and he says what they all say, but I was the best one. And we get Jodie back.
Yeah,
Jodie appears in the TARDIS, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And Jodie is the previous Doctor before the David Tennant
stint.
Yeah, and she's like, "You don't need to do this. Like, not worth it for this. We can find like another way." And he says, "You know, this is the only way." And she kind of goes like, "I wasn't gonna convince you."
Yeah.
And
So essentially,
hugs him.
she's trying to convince him because she thinks that they could find another solution. But the Shruti is like, I have to do it now while I still remember that a poppy existed.
Yeah,
because if I wait,
he keeps repeating himself. There's a Poppy. I need to find Poppy.
So he's afraid that if he doesn't do it now, he'll forget that Poppy ever existed, and he just won't do it at all.
Yeah, and so she's like, "I mean, I can't stop you, but you know, it sucks," which I feel like I agree with. But she's basically like, he's really like, "I'm really sorry that you have to go," or whatever. And he says, "I love you." And she's like, we don't say that.
No. She's also like, "You don't know me like that."
He's like, "We don't say that." So it was a really nice like interaction between Jodie and Shruti. I really recommend watching that. And he basically says goodbye to himself, which was really nice. And he like does the whole energy thing, and he not blows up the TARDIS, but like it does a thing, and he wakes up on the ground outside like Belinda's house, or Belinda's mom's house. And Belinda's there. She comes out and she's like, "Where have you been?" And "Where you been, Loca?" And and he comes in and Poppy's on the floor, and he's like, "Okay, I found her then." And like, he didn't find her. He like merged the worlds. So Poppy's now with Belinda. And Belinda's like, "Yeah, I told you all the time that I had to come back on May 24th at 7:30 a.m. for Poppy," which is bullshit, but sure. They're trying to convince you that this has been the plan the whole time.
Yeah, so that's like kind of what they're implying, that every moment that Belinda's like, "I have to get back home," it's because she needed to get back home to Poppy. Which...
it doesn't make sense to me because, first of all, she lives in an apartment with two other people that isn't like, there's no like baby anything in that house. So I feel like it would have been more convincing to like let us know, oh, she wanted Poppy now, so now she has Poppy, rather than try to convince us that this whole time she's been, because there's like a little montage of her saying like finishing every adventure and being like, "Gotta go home to Poppy."
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but like it doesn't make sense, because when she was first taken, she lived again in a flat with two other roommates in a house that clearly doesn't have a baby in it.
Right.
And like, no.
It's supposed to be this aha moment where we're supposed to be like, "Oh, that's what they meant every time they came back." It's supposed to be she wants to get back to her kid, but it just feels really unsatisfying, because at no point is this like ever hinted at to being an actual possibility. So this whole reveal, which is supposed to be like, "Oh, we missed it. We need to go back and we need to go back and watch the episodes. We missed it." We didn't actually miss anything. I just made it up for the finale.
I just watched them to make these videos for you.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel like a good reveal because it doesn't feel earned. It just comes out of nowhere. And then let's continue, because we're not even at the thing that pisses me off the most.
Okay. I guess the other way of looking at this is that they now changed the reality. So every time she wanted to go back for Poppy, but they spent so much time like recreating these scenes to try to convince you that this is why she wanted to go back, that it's like, I don't know. But anyway, she calls him like Uncle Doctor, and he's like, "Uncle?" And she's like, "Yeah, I thought it was cute." And he asks, "Who's the dad?" And she talks about a guy called Richie, and he like scans her without her consent. Belinda had already talked about this, Doctor.
He learned nothing.
Don't scan her without her consent. But he scans Poppy, and Poppy is 100% human. And so Poppy really is Belinda's with this Richie guy. And so the Doctor no longer has a daughter now. Then we get like closing shots of like the mom coming in. She's like, okay, I'm ready to go to my concert. Have a nice day. That's why she needed to come back at 7:30 for Poppy, because at 7:30 her mom needed to leave for like a concert because she's the violinist. They mentioned that in like the first episode for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And she stays with Poppy or whatever. And then he goes to leave and he's like, are you gonna come back? She asks, are you gonna come back at any point? It'd be really cool if we went to Neptune once Poppy's like all grown up. And he's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And she's like, but are you actually gonna come back? And he says, I hope so. But it won't be like this. And she doesn't understand that, obviously, because she doesn't know about regeneration. And he's like, don't worry about it. And then he leaves on his TARDIS to regenerate. And he says that he doesn't want to regenerate alone. And so he lands in space to where Joy is. Joy is now a star. If you watch the Joy to the World episode. If not, you're going to have to watch the Joy to the World episode.
Found out.
She's a star. And he's basically there with Joy. And he's like another little speech. And he regenerates, which I'm guessing is the part that pisses you off.
No, what pisses me off is, so they do all this shit of killing the Doctor for Poppy, but Poppy's not his daughter. So he does all this for his non-existent daughter that is not Poppy, because Poppy's not his daughter. And then we have this reveal where Poppy is supposed to have been there the entire time, which is not earned because we never see that during the show.
Yeah.
So all we really get is a new reality where Poppy now exists, which we didn't give a shit about, and we're losing Shruti for no reason.
Yeah.
So it feels so shit to lose a pretty good Doctor, in my opinion. I really liked Shruti. If he was given more time, I think he might have been my favorite Doctor.
Again, he only got 8 episodes per season.
Yeah, which, you know,
he was barely here.
Classic me liking the Doctor with not a lot of episodes, but
Eccleston only had 1 season as well.
And he's my favorite. But anyway, he was coming into his own, and he was being a really interesting Doctor, and they cut him off for plot reasons that don't feel good at all.
But realistically,
it's because he's black.
It's because he's black and gay. Because there's racist and homophobes all across
Yeah, I also
which makes no sense, because it's a show about different races and about different like genders and like sexual preferences. Like we have like aliens who are gay, and we have like Jack Harkness, and we have like it shouldn't have been this big of an issue, but like
but whatever. Since he's black and the last one was a woman, now everyone has a problem with the Doctor being woke when he's always been.
He truly has, and he's emotional and he cries. Yeah. So, you know.
No, it's because he's gay, even though Dr. Tennant cries all the time.
Yeah.
And Matt Smith is the whiniest doctor in the world. So, like, anyway, the point is, the Shruti did not get a chance to shine. I hope that it's because the actor just didn't want to do it and had other projects. I hope that's really the only good scenario that I can imagine for him not being the Doctor.
Yeah. Not him going away because
he was forced to. Yeah. Because if that were the case, then it really sucks, because Shruti is like a fantastic Doctor and deserves all of the praise. He did a really good job. Being the Doctor is not easy, and making a Doctor your own when there has been 17 people who have played the Doctor is not easy. So the fact that he kind of carved his own spot in the world of the Doctors is really cool, especially since he did it in such a short amount of time, right? Like, same with Jodie. I personally liked Jodie. I think it's really unfortunate that she got the short end of the stick, that the first time we get a woman Doctor is the first time they changed the entire show. So, like, it feels really bad that these people who are fantastic actors, by the way,
but they're different than a white
guy, get the big changes that kind of make people not like the show.
Yeah, so they can chalk it up to, it's just
the bad Doctor, which sucks, because Jodie is a fantastic actress and Shruti is a fantastic actor, and they're both really good, interesting, different Doctors to what we usually have. And it's so bad that they went out the way that they did. And it felt so lazy for me, the way that they did it for Shruti, like the way that they got him out.
I haven't even said who he regenerates into.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter.
It does matter.
It does matter.
Because he regenerates into Billy Piper.
Woo! If you don't know who that is Rose Tyler.
That's Rose Tyler from the first season of the new Who, in 2005.
This is also what I was referencing earlier in the video. I know we're a few minutes into our video. Shocker. We're yappers.
We're a few hours. It's 2.5 hours right now.
We don't know how long it's gonna be when we're done editing. So I didn't want to timestamp ourselves. But essentially, they did it again. They nostalgia'd us again, which feels so bad.
Which they did with David Tennant.
What they did with David Tennant, and it's like, guys, let these characters die. Yeah. Let these people move on. I know people
let my people go.
Yeah, people love Tennant and people love Rose, but you don't have to keep bringing these characters back over and over and over again. We can just rewatch the episodes.
I will say I'm excited for Billy because she loves Whoverse, and she's been back a couple of times throughout like the seasons. So obviously this must be super exciting for her. This is nothing against Billy Piper.
Right.
It's against like them trying to use nostalgia to bring their people, like the fans, back. And it shouldn't matter if you lose like the couple of people that are racist and don't like Shruti because he's black, or are sexist and didn't like Jodie because she's a woman. Because there's enough Whovians that will stick to Doctor Who. And even now that we don't really know where Doctor Who is going to go with this, if Disney Plus doesn't renew, there's people willing to wait years, because we have before. We've waited years for the Doctor to come back. So it feels kind of like shitty that they're like using this tactic rather than just like trusting their fans, I guess. Billy does have like a really cute like entrance, because he regenerates into Billy and she's like, oh, hello. Like she's like so excited. So that was really cute. But I don't know. I feel like, because I will say though, because like the whole thing is, when it was back on BBC, usually the Doctor wasn't revealed until like the regeneration episode. But there was usually like, it was like a tradition that they would be announced. You know, there was like an announcement of the next Doctor. And they would even go like, they had the famous like Graham Norton interview where they talked about being the next Doctor and stuff. And that was like a thing that you tuned in for. You like, they revealed the Doctor and then you saw the interview. And then for Rose, they didn't do that. And so that's why everyone's like kind of doubting if she's really the next Doctor. Another thing is that usually when they're the next Doctor, at the end of the episode, they say introducing blank as the Doctor. Like introducing Matt Smith as the Doctor, or introducing Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. But in this one, it said introducing Billy Piper. It didn't say as the Doctor.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, why didn't it say as the Doctor? Like, that's interesting. Like, is this like a fake out, or is this like, you know?
And
so
I'm low-key hoping it's a fake out and we get Shruti back, but we also it's tradition that we get the TARDIS also changes, which with every Doctor it didn't, or at least not that we saw with Billy.
It hasn't changed yet.
Yeah, it hasn't changed yet. So there are a lot of things that are up in the air for this new Doctor, not Doctor thing that's happening.
It does kind of suck that we probably won't get any more Doctor Who until at least like the end of 2026 or the start of 2027.
Yeah, maybe even more than that, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
But like we were saying earlier, I don't know. I feel like the writing has just gotten really lazy. Not to give a pass to, like, Shruti and Jodie are great doctors. They have bad episodes, and this is not a pass because they're black and a woman. They automatically get the good show. Like, they have bad episodes. They have good episodes. It's normal, like every other show. But they didn't even get the chance to come into their own. Like I felt they both, and I'm speaking mostly about both of them because I felt the same about both of them. I feel like they both got neutered right as they were getting to the good part.
Yeah.
Like right as they were getting into the good things of their own, like once they were coming into their own and kind of making their own version of the Doctor that's not still kind of discovering who he is or she is, they cut it off and changed it to another Doctor. I feel it's because of how... Okay. Strap in, everyone. I'm going on a rant. So I think it's because we're diving into this culture of streaming where if it's not immediately a success, it sucks. And we have to cut it. And we have to make something new. And they don't give time for these shows to grow and be the thing that they can be. And
I mean, Doctor Who did become popular until it was popular back in its like 1950s era, but when it came back, it got like a boom of like people who got interested in it. So I feel like if you're making a new show, you have to give it time for new generations to come in and watch it and understand and watch all the old episodes. Like if you just found out about this new show, you're gonna probably want to watch the old episodes. And so by the time you get to this like Doctor, it's gone. Like there's a whole lot of seasons to watch before this. So I feel like you have to give it time when it's a show this big.
Yeah. Also, I will say this show, which is also why the Billy regeneration bothered me so much. This show, as opposed to New Who, uses old Who as a crutch way too much.
Yeah.
When we were trying to explain this New Who to a friend of ours, shout out Lai, we found it really hard to not spoil anything or to not give her context.
We had to literally sit her down and be like, you're gonna watch Doctor Who.
Yeah, you have to watch Doctor Who, which is really unfortunate because the David Tennant I call it the David Tennant one because he's the most popular, but that rerun or reboot of Doctor Who doesn't rely as much on old Who.
Sometimes it does.
It does. But for the most part, like I would say 19 out of 20 episodes, you don't need to know old Doctor Who.
Or they explain it in the same episode.
Or they explain in the same episode.
Like when they introduce the Daleks, they're like, obviously the Daleks have been like one of the oldest like enemies to the Doctor, but when they introduce the Daleks in the new one, they're like, oh, these are the Daleks. They've been my enemy for years.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel like exposition.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of writing explanations or context into the episodes. So you don't have to watch old Who to understand what's happening. This new Doctor Who, it feels like I have to watch old Who, the reboot, the movies, the spin-off episodes, the spin-off. Yeah, like I have to watch every single part of every single Doctor Who thing to understand what's happening. And that is not good. That is a problem for long term that Marvel is now running into.
Yeah.
Where if you have 47 things you need to watch before you watch the new thing, people are just not going to watch it. And Star Wars too. Because if you have to watch 27 other shows to understand what's happening, you're just not going to watch it. You just won't care. And it's really unfortunate because again, the set design is beautiful. The music is wonderful. The costume design is amazing. The writing is, I have my problems with Moffat.
There's good episodes.
There's good episodes and bad episodes.
But these were Russell
the acting,
T. Davies ones.
Yeah, I don't love Russell T. Davies, but they have their episodes. Anyway, but the acting is really good for the most part. There are some actors in Jodie seasons that I have problems with, but for the most part,
that isn't Jodie.
Yeah, but for the most part, they do a really good job in everything except giving people that context. So if I want to have my friends join in and watch this show, they're gonna have to commit to watching 20 seasons of Doctor Who to be able to watch what I am watching and enjoy what I'm enjoying, which really, really sucks. And I don't see that changing with Billie Piper. In fact, I feel it's probably gonna get worse because it is like a nostalgia character that is probably going to be brought on by some nostalgia factor to the plot.
Well, the thing is now that she has like a lot of shoes to fill, because if she is the doctor, she's the doctor now, but she's also Rose, and she's also Bad Wolf, and I feel like she's just over, like she's been through the universe enough. So it's like if they had turned the doctor into Donna, she would have also been like, she's Donna and she's Dr. Donna, and she's like, these are things like the pressure that she has now to be like spectacular, because the fans are going to be expecting like a lot from her, is, you know, and you know, you'll have the same complainers that complained about Jodie because she's a woman, so they're gonna be like, oh, the doctor's a woman again, why can't it be a white man again? I feel like it would have been cool. I would have preferred for Shuti not to regenerate, but if he had to regenerate, that he would have regenerated into the fugitive doctor, who we're still waiting to learn about, you know?
Or literally anyone else. Like I have a problem.
But like if they have to choose someone from his past.
From his past, yeah.
Do the fugitive doctor. We still have a doctor that we don't know anything
or
about.
Eccleston. I mean, I'm sure Eccleston also doesn't want to come back.
You really want Eccleston?
No, but he also doesn't want to come back because there were a lot of issues.
Because he, like, okay, so Eccleston only had one season because he did the season and he decided he didn't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, because there were some work conditions that he didn't agree with, and some producers that were being inappropriate on set that he called out. And he said, as long as those people still work there, I'm not going to work there. And guess what? Those people still work there. So he's not coming back. However.
Which power to him.
Power to him, honestly. That just makes him more badass. But I don't know what the insistence is on regenerating the Doctor to previous characters that we already know. They must have a really good reason, or the alternative, which is worse, is they didn't plan it out. They just chose her because they needed someone from old Who that was willing, that was willing to be a doctor that wasn't Eccleston. Like, I'm sure Matt Smith is like not wanting to be a doctor. He has House of the Dragons and a bunch of other shit now that he doesn't need to go back to Doctor Who.
David Tennant has been overused.
Yeah, he's overstayed his welcome, I think.
Plus, he's still like technically a doctor.
Yeah, he's the other by generation.
Yeah. And he also has the Meta Crisis Doctor. There's currently 2 David Tennants in the world of Doctor Who that are still doctors.
He's in the other dimension.
Meta Crisis Doctor, yeah. With Rose.
Yeah. So again, that's the other part of this. So
switching to Spanish.
Sorry. The other half of the by generation of the Doctor is Tennant, and the other half is now his previous companion. So now we have a doctor who regenerated into himself from the past, and a doctor who regenerated into a companion from himself from the past that he fell in love with. So, I don't know. There's a lot from this Rose Tyler reveal that I don't love.
I don't wanna be too harsh on it though.
Yeah.
Because, again, I am gonna continue watching Doctor Who no matter what happens. I refuse to give up on it. Just because like people want to give up on it, but again, we'll have to see what happens, because if it ends like this, I will crash out. Like, this cannot be the ending to Doctor Who. But
it's such a cliffhanger ending that is not, like, so many things are left hanging. Like, the Master is still around.
Maybe they did
Mrs. Flood is still around.
Maybe they did that to see if Disney would
pick him up again,
because enough people would have been like, Billie Piper's back. Like,
yeah, it just doesn't feel satisfying. That's my gripe.
Anyway, I think this is
a good place to stop.
I think we've talked enough.
Yeah, the yap.
I'm also hungry. So.
Yeah, we should. Anyway, go ahead and.
Anyway, thank you for tuning in again. This is the last Doctor Who episode on my channel for now, and we'll see what happens next. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for yapping with me.
Thank you. And if you've watched so far in the video, please comment
banana pudding.
Comment banana pudding. Tell us If
And
you
he'll be
enjoyed,
back.
yeah, tell us if you enjoyed having me here. If you didn't, let me know too. I'd rather know.
If you didn't, comment pudding banana.
That's too confusing. Comment chocolate pudding if you don't want me back. Banana pudding if you do want me back. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I have been your precious guest, husbando. This has been your favorite YouTuber, Drami Shandia.
Please like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe.
If you want.
No. Like and subscribe.
Okay, well. And I guess I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.